Masechet Kiddushin Daf Yod Tet. Please excuse my hoarse voice. Ba'eresh Lakish. Ma'u shema'ed Adam libno katan. Beno malachamana beno koldeu. Odirma beno dum yadideh. Ma'hu gadol af beno gadol. We have a father who sold off his minor daughter as an amma ivriya. At any point, the owner can decide to do yi'ud, and he says, to marry her. He can do that and the owner is an adult. But what about his son? So we know the son can also do yi'ud, as it says right here. If the owner wants to designate the amavriya as a wife for his son, he can do so. The question is, what if the son is a minor? Can he marry off his son as a minor through yi'ud, or does yi'ud have to be done by an adult when the son is an adult? Here's the two sides. On the one hand, it says bino, his son, so that seems to be inclusive, no matter how old his son is. Or do we say that his son has to be similar to him? Just like the owner is an adult and can do yi'ud, so too the son has to be an adult in order to do yi'ud. That's the two sides of the question. Here's attempt number one at an answer. Amar bizera tashema. Ish perat katan. Asher yinafet eshet ish perat eshet katan. V'yamat miya'ad imken masinu ishut lekatan. We're talking about this pasuk here in Vayikra that says, ish, if a man should commit adultery with eshet ish, with a wife of a man. So these two words, man and man, we learn are davka, that they have to be adults and not children. So the first one says, and the rest of the pasuk is that mot yumat, they get the death penalty. So if the perpetrator is an adult, then he gets the death penalty, but not a child, not a minor. If a minor does this or any sin, they don't get punished. Minors are not responsible for their actions. So a minor who commits adultery with another man's wife does not get the death penalty. Furthermore, if a man would commit adultery with the wife of a minor, right? A minor somehow tries to marry a woman, that marriage is not really a marriage because a minor can't marry a woman. And therefore, if another man would go and sleep with her, that would not be adultery and that person would not get the death penalty. So that's the end of the Braita. Now here we go. If you say that a minor can do yi'ud, then actually you can have a deoraita case of marriage with a minor. And so if a father did yi'ud for his minor son, or if a father authorized his minor son to do yi'ud with an amma ivriya, then they would be fully married. And if another guy would come and take that woman, then that should be adultery. So therefore we can prove that a minor cannot do yi'ud, because you see here that, right, that anyone who sleeps with the wife of a minor is not really his wife. Okay, that's proof number one. But then we challenge. So what are you saying, that there's no yi'ud for a minor? Then why does the pasuk have to bother to minimize it? In other words, if there's no marriage at all with a minor boy, marriage is impossible, then obviously it's not adultery. There's no marriage. If there's no marriage, there's no adultery. We don't need an extra word to come and teach us that. So tifshot mina de mi'ad. So now we can actually prove the opposite, that yi'ud does work with the minor, and this is the case that this midrash is coming to exclude. If a minor does yi'ud, then it is a marriage, and nevertheless, even though it's technically a marriage, if she commits adultery, there is no death penalty. Rabbi says, no, I can present a different case of how a minor can enter into a full marriage, even though he can't do regular Kiddushin and Nisuin. He can do Yibum. If someone dies without children and has a brother who's living, who's at least 9 years old, has to be at least 9 years old, because under 9, any act that boy would do is not considered a legal sexual act. But from a 9 and above, it is considered a legal sexual act, and that's all you need for Yibum. Once he does that, they are now married. So that's the case that this Midrash is coming to exclude, and not a case of Yehud. The Medoraita Chazyale. On a Doraita level, a minor can perform Yibum. Maudetema Kivan de Medoraita Chazyale Biatobia, Abala Mitre Beshet Ish Kamash Malan. I would have thought without this word, Eshet Ish, that since on the Doraita level, a boy can do Yibum, the Biaz Bia, and therefore they're married, I might have thought that when she commits adultery with another guy, that guy and the wife also will require the death penalty, and that's why it says Eshet Ish only get the death penalty if the woman is married to an adult, not if she's married to a minor through Yibum. So there's no proof from here that Yehud has to be. It can't be with a minor. So we go back to the drawing board. What's the answer? Shema. Amarabi aibu, amarabi yanai, en yehud ela begadol, en yehud ela midat. Here's the source. Rabbi Yanai says that yehud can only works with an adult man, and also has to be with consent. We'll see whose consent. Okay, Tarateh. Now we ask, why do you need to tell me both of them? Right? Because after all, if you need consent of the boy, of the man, then obviously it has to be an adult. A minor does not have the ability to give consent. Even if he says yes, 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 it doesn't mean consent because he doesn't have mental capacity to fully understand what it is. So why does he have to say both? Just say he has to do with consent, and I'll know it has to be an adult. And the answer is two answers. Matam kamad, matam en yehud ela begadol, lefisha en yehud ela midat. It's actually explaining it. So it really is one reason. It's saying only an adult can do yehud. And what's the reason? Because you need consent, and therefore, since you need consent, it has to be an adult. So really, it is one reason. It's just expressed as two. That's one answer. Or another answer is two separate halachot. One is that the man has to be an adult. A separate halakha has to be with her consent. We ask her, are you okay with marrying this guy? She has to say, okay, whatever, the owner, the son, she has to be okay with it. The same way a woman has to consent to accepting Kiddushin, so to here. Now, actually, when a father marries off a minor girl, the girl does not have, we don't need consent of the girl. The father can act on her behalf. But here, with Yehud, even though the father sold her off against her will, but at this point, she can decide whether she wants to be subject to Yehud and marry the guy or not. Make a play on words of Ya'ada and Ya'ada. Yehud, which means designation, but also sounds like to inform her. So we learn from here that you have to inform her, hey, you're gonna, this boy, adult, son, wants to do Yehud with you, or you're okay with it, and then you can go ahead with Yehud. Good. So now we actually have an answer to our question. In fact, an owner cannot give the Ama Ivriya over to Yehud with a minor son. It has to be a son who reached adulthood. Now, this law that a minor, that Ama Ivriya has to give consent, what's the reason for it? Hu tanela vehu amar la. Not only did he teach us the law, but Rabbi Abu, not only did he quote the Tanaitic source from it, but he also explained it. And these are technical terms, Tane and Amar. Tane means to repeat an old tradition, so that's why the Mishnayot are called, the rabbis of the Mishnah are called Tanaim, as well as the transmitter who remember them, the authors and transmitters of those sources, the Mishnah, other Baraitot. The later sages are called Amoraim. Amar doesn't only mean to say, it also means to explain. They're the explainers, because the Gemara, written by the Amoraim, explains the Tanaitic sources. So he transmitted it, and he also explained it. Why does the Amavriya, why do we need her consent? בקידושי יהוד, ועליבא דרבי יוסף ורבי יהודה דאמר, מהות הראשונות לאו לקידושין ניתנו. Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Yehuda, who we already saw in the previous daf, mentioned he says that the original money that the father received from the owner when he sold his daughter into slavery, that's not for Kiddushin. That's just to sell her into slavery. The Kiddushin is affected by the owner foregoing some amount of time at the end of the slave of her being a slave, and she accepted herself. So we see here that she is actually the one deciding if she wants to go free now and marry this guy, or work till the end and not marry him. So since she's the one giving it up, she's the one that decides. Whereas if you say that it's the father who, when he received that money turns out now, once you do Yi'ud, retroactively is Kesef Kiddushin, then the father will have accepted the money, and the father can marry off his daughter against her will. We don't need her consent. So this law that says that you need consent makes sense according to the Biyoseh and the Biyudah, because she is deciding now, not the father. The father's gone. He took the money and ran. Whatever he did with it doesn't matter. She's the one that's saying, I'm willing to marry you instead of working for the next 10 days or however long is left. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak amar afilu tema lekiddushin nitnu shana echad amar chamana ya'ada. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says, I can even say that this law that a Ma'abri has to consent can even be if you say that the original sale money was in fact for Kiddushin. You'll say, well, if that was for Kiddushin, then it's the father that accepted it and gave over his daughter, now originally in as a slave, but now it will turn out to be in marriage, so the father can do it without her consent. So why do you need her consent? And the answer is, this is different. There's a Gezerat HaKatuv. It says, Ada, you have to let her know. So that's why. So in fact, we can explain this law according to either opinion. Now, Ma'ad Biyoseh Biyudah, we already quoted him a couple of times. We never brought the original source of his. So what is the source? Tetanya. Yada ve'efta. Sarich sheyeh shehut bayom kedei pediyah. The pasuk puts these two words together back in Shemot. Im ra'a b'nei Adonai asher lo ya'ada ve'efta. So it says if he didn't want to do yi'od, he has to do redemption. And now we learn from the juxtaposition of these two words that if you want to do yi'ud, there has to be a possibility of still doing redemption. In other words, there has to be some time left in her term of service. He can't do it after the 6 years are up or after she's an adult, because at that point, she already goes free. Now, why? Why would you need to have some time left in her sentence or in her service in order to do yi'ud? מכאן אמר רבי יוסף ברבי יהודה, אם יש שעות ביום כדי לעשות עמו שווה פרוטה, מקודשת, ואם לאו, אינה מקודשת. So Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda explains, if there's some time left, and now let's say it's the very last day, she's about to end her 6 years at sunset. If there's some time left, let's say 10 minutes left till sunset, and how much is her work worth during those 10 minutes? If it's worth at least a peruta, and at that point the owner says, Aherat mekudeshet li, Aherat meyu'edet li, so then the Kiddushin works. Why? It works with that amount of money, or the equivalent of money, what she would have worked for. The owner says, you keep that work, and it's worth a peruta, so you're mekudeshet with a peruta of work that you are saving, that you're going to go free now, and you don't have to work for the next 10 minutes. But let's say there's only 5 minutes left, and 5 minutes of work is not worth even a peruta. And the owner says, with the last 5 minutes of your work, no good, because Kiddushin, you need at least a peruta. It's evident that according to Rabbi Yosef ben Yehuda, the original money, sale money that went from the owner to the father was not for Kiddushin. That was a lot of money. That was, $1,000. And that makes no difference, because that's not for Kiddushin, that's only for the sale. She's the one that accepts and agrees to the Kiddushin at the end of the service, when with the last few minutes. It could be more, it could be many days, it could be many months, whenever he decides to do Yehud, the fact that the owner forgoes that work, she receives that as Kiddushin. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak amar afilu tema lekiddushin nitnu, shana echad amar chamana vehefta. Bar Yitzchak says, I can even argue that the original money that went to the father, in fact, was for Kiddushin. Nevertheless, if you want to do Yehud, there has to be time left in the service to do redemption. Why? Not for any logical reason, but rather because the pasuk says, "Ve'efta shos tegezerat hakatuv." That's the way it has to be. So Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak would agree that there has to be time left. He just would not say it for the same reason as Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Yehuda. Amar Rav Nachman, Omer Adam lebito haketana, se'i vekabeli kiddushayich, med Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says we can learn from Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, who said that a father sells his daughter as a slave, accepts that money, and that's gone, that money's finished, and then she can accept her own Kiddushin later on with her own consent by accepting in lieu of the service that she would do. We can learn from there that in a regular case, not of slavery, if a father tells his minor daughter, go and receive that money from the groom and be mikudeshet, that works. That she can be kind of like a messenger that the father is appointing. Technically, the groom should give the money to the father, but the father can say, hey, daughter, you can accept it, and that's okay. Well, how do you know that? Because it's equivalent. The point is that when the father sold this daughter into slavery, in the slavery case, he's basically saying, listen, I'm telling you off as a slavery, and built into that system is that should the owner decide to do Yehud, you can decide to accept that Yehud, right? And then that you can decide to accept a Kiddushin in lieu of your work. So the father is basically pre-authorizing her to enter into Yehud, and therefore the father in a regular case also can pre-authorize the girl, you can go and accept the money of your Kiddushin. לאו אמר רבי יוסף ורבי יהודה, מעות הראשונות אב קידושין ניתנו, וכי שבשפרותה אבו קידושין החמה נמה לשנה. We explained further this proof. Didn't Rabbi Yosef ורבי יהודה say that the original money of that he bought it for is not Kiddushin? So what's the Kiddushin with? It's with the work that she's doing at the end. That has to be worth at least a peruta. And through that she gets Kiddushin. So she's accepting her own Kiddushin. And so too here, a minor daughter can accept her own Kiddushin in a regular case. אמר רב נחמן, המקדש במלווה שיש עליה משכון מקודשת ברבי יוסף ברבי יהודה. He says further, let's say I'm a man, I'm a groom, and I want to do Kiddushin with this woman, and she owes me money. So instead of giving her something, I'm going to relinquish the loan. Furthermore, there is a mashkon, I'm holding her watch. And I give her the watch, right? Now, I never owned the watch, really. So I'm giving her the watch, and I forego the loan. That is good Kiddushin. How can you tell? From this. Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, Lava ma Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda ma'ot harishonat avi Kiddushin nitnu. Hai halvahi v'hi gufam mashkon hi. In the case of a father who sells off his daughter as a slave, the original sale money is not Kiddushin. Okay, so now where is the value of the Kiddushin? Where is the owner giving her something? Well, this scenario is kind of like a loan. Basically, she owes service or money to the owner, right? You can tell that because someone can redeem her and pay instead. So she owes that. Now he is saying, I forego the loan. I forego the next 10 minutes of your service. So he can do that. Now, where's the mashkon in this case? She herself is the collateral. She is a slave. She's bound to the owner until she finishes her service or pays back the loan. So you see here that you can do Yehud equals Kiddushin by the owner saying, Ared Mekudesh li, buy, and you're free for the remainder of your service, and thereby he's forgiving the loan and giving her back her freedom. And so you see, that's an equivalent case, and so you could do that in a regular case too. Now, as long as there is at least I said, whatever, 10 minutes, a Pedutah's worth of work at the end, and he does Yehud, the Kiddushin is valid. Therefore, in a general case, when a groom forgoes a loan and the collateral is already now in her hands, that Kiddushin is also a valid Kiddushin. And now more about Yehud, the Tenor Banan, Kesad Mitzvat Yehud. How does one perform this mitzvah and ceremony of Yehud? אומר לה בפני שיניים, הרי את מקודשת לי, הרי את מאורסת לי. אפילו בסוף שש, ואפילו סמוך לשקיעת החמה. The owner will take the amavriya that he had bought, and before two witnesses, just like Kiddushin, he says, הרי את מקודשת לי. He doesn't add anything like בטבעת זו, בכספה הדין, because he's not giving her anything. Or he could say, הרי את מאורסת לי. That's all the same. Even if it's at the end of the 6 years, even if it's right before sunset, at the very end of the 6 years, that's okay. But he has to treat her like a wife and not like a slave. He can't at that point, go clean the toilet. No, he has to say, let's go out on a date. So now they change their relationship, and by doing that, by saying that and now treating her in a different way, now they will become, there we saw Yehud effectuates Kiddushin. That is Tanakama, who says you can even wait all the way until the end of her service. Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda Omer, אם יש שהות ביום כדי לעשות עמו שווה פרוטה מקודשת, ואם לאו אינה מקודשת. Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda says you cannot wait all the way until the end. Listen, even Tanakama says you can't wait after sunset, because by then she's free. That's it. As a free woman, you can't do Yehud anymore. He could just go and do regular Kiddushin, if he wants, but can't do Yehud. So it still has to be while she's a Shivcha, a Shivcha, but it can be even 2 seconds before sunset. However, according to the Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, there has to be enough time during the day that her work from that point until the end of the day would be worth at least a perutah. Because Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda thinks that the Kiddushin, what he's giving her is that he's foregoing on the rest of the work. That's what she's getting. That's why it has to be Shaveh Perutah. Otherwise, no good. Whereas at Tokoi Tadakama, they think that the original sale money, that was the Kiddushin that he gave to the father, and therefore, even if it's 2 seconds less than the Perutah, that's still okay. Now the Baraita adds a mashal, לעומד לאישה, התקדשי לי מעכשיו לאחר 30 יום, ובא אחר וקידשה בתוך 30 יום, שמקודשת לראשון. It's like a groom tells a bride, be my wife from now after 30 days. In other words, it will take effect. In other words, in 30 days, you'll be my wife retroactively from now. But in the meantime, you're not. But then in 30 days, retroactively, you will be. Okay, now it's a time paradox. In the meantime, in day 15, a second guy comes and gives her Kiddushin. What's the law? The law is she mikudeshet only to the first. Even though at the time that the second guy came, she was not mikudeshet, so really said that should work. Once the 30 days comes, retroactively she had been mikudeshet to the first, and the second is nothing. Now, this mashal leman, who was the parable for? Is it for Tanakama or for Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda? Ilem mashal Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, ha'im yashut bayom kedei lasot imo shaveh peruta mikudeshet, ve'im lav lo. Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda said there has to be time left in the day because there has to be something valuable in the work that she is yet to do that the owner is going to forego, which means that she's only mikudeshet from that point of the Yehud and on, not retroactively from the money that the owner gave to the father. So the mashal is not similar to Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Rather, the mashal is good for Rabbanan because they say that the kiss of Kiddushin, originally it was given as a sale. That's true. Right, here's my daughter, and give me $1,000. And he does that, so he keeps it. Good. When, however, you do Yehud, then it turns out retroactively that money was kesef kiddushin. So that's the same as a man giving a woman kiddushin now, and it will only take effect in 30 days, but in 30 days it will be retroactive with the money that she had gotten at that point. Good, so it is a good mashal for Rabbanan. We ask, Peshita, isn't this obvious? Like, what is the mashal adding to that we didn't already know? Even though in the case of Yehud, the father doesn't say, right, I'm taking this money as a sale price, but if you should do Yehud, she is married retroactively from now. He didn't say that. Nevertheless, even though he doesn't say that, it's considered as if he says it, and it is comparable to a case of a man who gives a woman money and says in 30 days, you will be retroactively from now. In the Mashal, he says it explicitly, Me'achshav. In the case over here of Yehud, you don't have to say Me'achshav, it's implied. Okay, so that's what we learned. That's what the mashal is there for. That's all one version. There's another version of this paraita. Tanya idach. המוכר את ביתו והלך וקידשה לאחר, שיחק באדון מקודשת לשני. דברי רבי יוסף ורבי יהודה. A father sells off his daughter as a minor to a guy. Now, right now she's on Ma'ivriya. In the meantime, while she's on Ma'ivriya, he marries her off to a second guy. Now, even though it's not very nice to do that, he's mocking the master, because really the master should have a right to do Yehud at any time before, 10 minutes or more before the end. And now that he did this, he's like, hey, I'm marrying off to another guy, even though I already sold him to you, and you're supposed to have the first right to marry her. So it's not very nice. Nevertheless, the Kiddushin to the second guy works, according to Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, because he said the Yehud is not retroactive, but only from the time that the owner does it and on. So therefore, the marriage to that other guy is valid. Chachamim, however, say if the owner, even after the father marries her off to a second guy, if the owner who bought her beforehand wants to do Yehud, he can, and that will take effect retroactively before the Kiddushin to the second guy, and therefore the second guy is out, and the owner who bought her earlier will be her husband. Mashal la'omer leisha, ared mekudeshet li lachar 30 yom, ובאחר וקידשה בתוך 30 יום שמקודשת לשני. And this paraita also has a mashal, but without the word achshav, of a man that goes to him and says, here, you're mekudeshet to me, it will take effect only in 30 days. Doesn't say retroactively. In the meantime, on day 15, a second guy comes and gives her Kiddushin. The Kiddushin is valid only for the second guy. The first guy is out because his takes effect later than after the second guy. Now, who does this mashal come to serve? Mashal leman. Ilemal Rabbanan. Hame Rabbanan imrasa le'aed me'aed. Rabbanan said, if the owner who owned her first wants to do Yehud, he can, and it will work retroactively. And the second guy is out. That's not the same as the mashal. Ela maravacha bered Rava, mashal Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. This mashal does serve Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, because just like Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda says that it does not work retroactively. The second guy who comes and takes her, he gets it because he did it before the Yehud. That's the same as this groom who says in 30 days, not retroactively, and the second guy who comes in between and gives her Kiddushin, he is Zoche, and he is the husband. So that makes sense according to Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. We say, Peshita, what are we learning new from this mashal? Ma'udetema ha lo amar la lachar 30 yom kamashmalan. Without the mashal, I would have thought that the reason that in the case of the maidservant, the master doesn't get it and the other guy got it is because he didn't say at the time that he bought her that I intend to do Yehud after 30 days or whenever at some certain time. Since he didn't say anything, he is not clear at all that he ever wants to do Yehud. And that's why when the father marries her off to the second guy, then it works for the second guy. But I might have thought that if the owner, at the time that he bought her, says, listen, I'm going to do Yehud and she's going to be mine after 30 days. In that case, I might have thought that that's it. It's his right, and the second guy who comes and does Kiddushin would lose her. So therefore the Mashal comes to teach that this case of the maidservant is the same as a regular case when you do not make a retroactive clause, when you say you are Mekudeshet to me only after 30 days. If someone comes and preempts and takes her and marries her beforehand, then she'll be married to whoever gives it to her first. And that's the same as this case, whether he says nothing or whether he says Lachar Sheloshim Yom, it doesn't matter. The master's Kiddushin of Yehud works only from the time of the Yehud forward. If the father marries her off at any time before that, then she'll be married to that other guy. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen v'amen.